Welcome to Starbound. My name is Chikondi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please quickly check below to see if you've subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free, and it just helps make sure that our videos pop up in your feed more often. Mikhail Reeves pressed his palm against the pristine white wall of the Varunian staging facility, feeling none of the subtle vibrations that any properly ventilated building should have. His calloused fingers, bearing the testament of 30 years pulling people from burning buildings, found only the cold perfection of automated climate control. No hum of air handlers, no whisper of circulation, just sterile silence. "Your atmospheric preferences have been noted and accommodated," a melodic voice announced from hidden speakers. "Current conditions are optimized for human comfort parameters." "Thanks," Mikhail muttered, dropping his hand. The burn scars across his forearm caught the artificial lighting as he reached for his duffel bag. But sometimes a little discomfort keeps you sharp. The facility stretched before him in flowing curves of white and silver, everything automated to the point of sterility. Cleaning drones zipped silently along programmed paths, their sensors ensuring not a speck of dust survived. The few Varunians he could see moved with purpose, their feather scales laying flat and sleek against their tall frames as they consulted holographic readouts. A flash of deep blue and gold caught his eye. Ixil Naram approaching with the precise stride of someone who had never stumbled. Her feather scales shone with almost holographic flare in the artificial lighting as she stopped exactly 3 meters away, the Varunian standard for professional discourse.
"Welcome to Forward Station Epsilon, Mr. Reeves,"
she said, her head tilting at the exact angle of polite acknowledgement.
"I trust your journey was comfortable."
"Call me Mikhail." He shouldered his worn duffel bag, notes of smoke still lingering in the fabric despite countless washes. "And the trip was fine, though your pilots seemed nervous about letting me anywhere near the manual controls."
"Yes, well..."
Ixil's feathers shifted in what he was learning to read as diplomatic discomfort.
"Our protocols exist for good reason. While we appreciate the Federation's insistence on including traditional survival consultants, I want to be clear that Varunian safety standards will take precedence during operations."
Mikhail nodded, watching a cleaning drone adjust its path to avoid their conversation space by exactly 1 meter. Everything measured, everything controlled. He thought of rookie firefighters who showed up with spotless gear, confident that modern equipment would do all the work. "Of course," he said, "though in my experience, the universe doesn't care much about protocols when things go sideways." A younger Varunian with green-tinted plumage appeared, their movements carrying the slight hesitation of junior staff around leadership.
"Expedition Leader Naram, the team is ready for equipment calibration in Lab 3. "Thank you, Terran."
Ixil turned back to Mikhail.
"If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your quarters. We begin mission prep at 0600 station time tomorrow."
As they walked, Mikhail noted the absence of emergency stairs, of manual door releases, of any system that didn't rely on power and computers. His mind automatically mapped exit routes, contingencies, the way it had since his first day at the academy. Old habits die hard, and those habits had saved more lives than any technology he'd ever used.
"Excuse me, Mr. Reeves?"
Mikhail turned to find Terran had followed them, feathers slightly puffed in what might have been nervousness. "Just Mikhail is fine."
I was wondering..."
Terran glanced at Ixil, who had paused several meters ahead.
"I've studied records of human emergency response tactics. Is it true you would enter burning structures with only insulated fabric as protection?"
"Still do," Mikhail said. "Turnout gear's gotten better, but at its core, it's still just treated fabric and leather. Sometimes simple works best."
"Fascinating,"
Terran breathed, their feathers rippling with genuine interest.
"Perhaps during this mission you could explain more about Terran! Ixel's tone was gentle but firm. The calibration team is waiting. Yes, Expedition Leader. Terran's feathers smoothed immediately as they hurried off. Mikhail watched them go, hiding a smile. Maybe there was hope yet. Under all the technology and protocols, they were still just people. People who understood, somewhere deep down, that you couldn't program your way out of every disaster. He just hoped they wouldn't have to learn that lesson the hard way. The descent through VX-238's atmosphere painted the inside of the shuttle with hellish red light. Through the reinforced viewport, Mikhail watched clouds of volcanic ash swirl against the shielding. The stuff looked exactly like the smoke from a 5-alarm chemical fire he'd fought in '89, the kind that meant you checked your gear twice and kept one eye on the exit. Even in the late 2080s, there were few things worse. "Environmental suits are reading nominal," Terran announced from their monitoring station. The young Varunian's feathers shifted with pride as they gestured to a complex readout. "Latest atmospheric analysis shows all hazards within acceptable parameters." Mikhail adjusted the seal on his borrowed suit, the material too smooth against his scarred hands. "Those sensors measuring sulfur dioxide levels?" "Among 37 other atmospheric components," Ixel said. "Our equipment can detect trace elements down to parts per billion." She tapped a control, bringing up a detailed chemical analysis. "Is there a specific concern?" "Just that those readings don't match what I'm seeing." Mikhail pointed to the thick clouds below. "That ash is yellow-tinted. Means high sulfur content, probably more than your senses are showing. Seen it enough times in industrial fires." "The sensors are calibrated to the highest possible standard," Ixel said, though she studied the view with new intensity. "Perhaps human visual perception is creating a false pattern." The shuttle touched down on a ridge overlooking the active caldera. Heat radiated through the landing struts, sending temperature warnings across the vessel's displays. The team began their careful exit procedure, each step measured and logged. Mikhail stepped onto the black glass surface, feeling the subtle vibrations through his boots. The ground wasn't just hot, it was moving. Micro-tremors pulsed in a rhythm he recognized from collapsed buildings when the structure was about to give way. "Primary survey zone is half a kilometer ahead," Ixel said, consulting her tablet. "Scans show minimal tectonic activity. We should have at least 6 hours before the next major eruption cycle." "We need to move." Mikhail kept his voice level, professional. "No point in causing panic. Those tremors are getting stronger. The whole ridge is unstable." "Our model accounts for all known variables," Ixel said. "The predictive algorithms—" A crack split the air like a gunshot. A fissure opened in the obsidian surface, venting steam hot enough to make their suit's temperature alerts shriek. The entire ridge groaned. "New scan!" Terran called out, their feathers pressed flat against their neck. "Magma chamber pressure increasing exponentially!" "That's not possible," Ixel said, fingers flying across her tablet. "The models—" "Everyone back to the shuttle!" Mikhail barked. "Now!" The ground buckled. Mikhail caught Terran as they stumbled, steadying the lighter Varunian. The rest of the team scrambled across the cracking surface, their usual grace abandoned in favor of survival. "How did you know?" Ixel asked as they reached the shuttle. Her tablet showed cascading warning signals, the carefully calculated predictions shattering like the ridge beneath them. 30 years pulling people out of collapsing buildings, Mikhail said, helping the lost team member up the ramp. You learn to feel it in your bones when something's about to give way. The ridge exploded. Superheated rock sprayed into the sky as the magma chamber below breached. The shuttle's engines roared as Ixil gunned the thrusters, barely lifting them clear of the destruction. Through the viewport, Mikhail watched the survey site vanish in a torrent of molten stone. Above them, the ash cloud boiled with strange electrical discharges, turning the sky into a sea of charged particles and burning rock. Mikhail gripped his seat's restraints,
recognizing a new danger in the metallic tang that filled the air. Some threats were older than humanity itself, and twice as deadly. The shuttle's systems died all at once. No gradual failure, no cascading shutdown, just darkness and silence as every circuit overloaded. The electrical storm in the ash cloud had done what a volcano couldn't, knocked them completely out of the sky. "Brace for impact!" Mikhail shouted, already calculating their trajectory. Without power, they had maybe 30 seconds before they hit the volcanic plain below. He pulled the manual release for the crash webbing, hearing the pneumatic hiss as backup systems deployed around the others. Ixil's voice cut through the darkness. "Emergency landing protocols!" "No time for protocols," Mikhail said. "Everyone pull your straps tight and tuck your heads down. Terran, give me a read on our speed." I can't! The displays are dead!" Fear crept into Terran's voice. "All of them!" The shuttle plummeted through the ash cloud. Mikhail tracked their descent by the changing rumble of wind against the hull, feeling each thermal current through the frame. 20 seconds. The volcanic plain would be coming up fast. "We're dropping slower than I thought." Mikhail gripped the emergency stabilizer controls, simple hydraulic systems that might still work. "Everyone lean left on my mark." A rush of hot air told him they'd cleared the ash cloud. The ground would be visible now, if any of their eyes could adjust fast enough to the darkness. Mikhail counted under his breath, timing the final approach. "Now!" The team threw their weight left as Mikhail yanked the stabilizer. The shuttle lurched, bleeding off speed as it spiraled. A grinding crunch shook the cabin as they clipped an outcropping, but the impact bled off more velocity. Mikhail pulled up hard on the nose. They hit the ground at an angle, skidding across the volcanic rock. Metal screamed. Emergency foam deployed around them as the shuttle finally crashed to a stop, tilted on its side but intact. "Status check," Mikhail called out. "Sound off!" One by one, the team responded. No serious injuries. The crash foam and webbing had done their jobs, but as the adrenaline faded, a new problem became apparent. "The environmental controls are offline," Ixil said, her voice tight with controlled fear. "Without power, our suits will lose integrity within minutes." Mikhail was already moving, feeling his way through the darkened cabin. "We need to get clear of the shuttle. That electrical storm knocked out everything electronic, which means the emergency beacon won't work either. We're on our own." "The survey equipment," someone started. "Fried," Mikhail cut them off. "Right now we need shelter. I spotted a ridge formation about half a kilometer east during our descent. Might have caves or overhangs we can use." "How can you be sure?" Ixil asked. "Without scanning equipment?" "Because I've done this before. Different circumstances, same problems. We need solid rock over our heads." Mikhail found the manual release of the main hatch. "Everyone pair up. Hold on to each other's suits. We move as a group." The hatch swung open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Heat and sulfur dioxide poured in. Not immediately lethal levels, but their suits wouldn't protect them for long. Mikhail stepped out first, testing the rock with his boots. "Stay close to the ground," he said. "There's better down here, and you're less likely to lose your footing." He turned to help Terran down from the shuttle. "Ixil, you bring up the rear. Keep count of your people." The Varunian expedition leader hesitated only a moment before nodding. "You heard him! Pair up and stay low!" They moved as a group across the volcanic plain, keeping the shuttle between them and the still active caldera. The ground shook with aftershocks, but Mikhail led them along ridges of older, cooler rock. The ridge he'd spotted grew larger, a massive thrust of basalt pushed up by ancient forces. More importantly, he could see what the Varunians couldn't yet make out in the ashy gloom. A deep alcove cut into the rock face, sloping upward away from the volcanic plain. Natural shelter, formed by the same forces currently trying to kill them. "There," he pointed. "We can secure a position there, assess our situation properly." "Without our equipment?" The question came from somewhere in the group. voice shaking with more than exertion. "We've got everything we need," Mikhail said. "Experience, training, each other. The rest is just details." They reached the alcove just as the first suit integrity warnings began to chime. The space was deep enough to get them out of the worst of the heat and gas, with multiple chambers branching deeper into the rock. Mikhail did a quick survey, identifying a ventilation path from the way the air moved. Ixil finished counting her team, then turned to Mikhail.
"What now?"
"Now," he said, "I teach you how to survive without a computer to tell you how to breathe. The suits are more important than the electronics," Mikhail explained, examining the complex Varunian environment suit laid out before him. "We can compensate for loss of thermal regulation, but not for complete breach." The team gathered around him in the relative safety of the alcove, their own suits showing signs of the emergency landing. Scuffs and tears marked the usually pristine surface coating, though the critical layers remained intact for now. "The material itself is still good," he continued, running scarred fingers along a seam. "We just need to maintain the physical barriers without power. See this joint here? The seal's mechanical. Powered systems just make it easier to use."
Terran leaned forward, feathers drawn tight in concentration. "But without computer assistance, how can we verify the seal integrity?"
"Same way we did on Earth for 100 years. Mikhail pulled out a small canister from his belt. "Soap. Put it on a seal, press the joint together. If it bubbles, you got a leak." He demonstrated on the suit's arm seal, the liquid forming a perfect line. "Simple, reliable. Can't be shorted out by an electromagnetic pulse."
"Ingenious," Ixil said softly, watching the demonstration. Her tablet hung useless at her side, screen dark. "Though I suspect maintaining atmospheric safety will be more complicated."
Mikhail nodded toward the deeper cave passages. "That's our next lesson. The volcanic activity's pushing up more than just ash and steam. We need to..."
A tremor shook the alcove, sending loose rocks clattering down the walls. Deep in the passages, something cracked. The sound of rushing gas filled the chamber.
"Sulfur dioxide,"
Mikhail said, recognizing the sharp smell even through his suit filters.
"Everyone up! We need to move up to higher ground."
They retreated deeper into the cave system, climbing to a higher chamber as toxic gas pooled below. Mikhail kept them moving until the air tasted clean again, then called a halt.
"The gas is heavier than air," he explained. "It'll sink to the lowest points. Up here we're safer, but we need better filtration."
He gestured to their suits.
"The passive filters won't last long against volcanic gases."
"The emergency rebreathers have maybe 2 hours of capacity," one of the team members said. "After that,
we improvise."
Mikhail moved to the chamber wall, examining the volcanic rock.
"See these mineral deposits? Zeolites. Chabazite, to be specific. Natural molecular sieves. We can use them to strip harmful compounds from the air."
Ixil touched the crystalline formations. "These are used in industrial air purification."
"Nature did it first," Mikhail said. "We just copied the design. Help me break out some chunks. Clean fractures only. We need the crystal structure intact."
They worked together, carefully extracting zeolite samples. Mikhail showed them how to identify the best pieces by crystal pattern and density. The team's scientific background served them well. Once he explained the principles, they quickly grasped the practical application.
"Now for the filters themselves."
Mikhail removed the powered filter assembly from his suit's intake system, leaving only the basic framework.
"We lay the crystals between fabric. The finer the weave, the better. Creates a passive filtration system that'll handle most of what this volcano can throw at us."
Terran held up their completed filter, studying the layers. "The molecular structure isn't just absorbing compounds in the air. The crystals are actually catalyzing the breakdown of complex gases."
"Exactly," Mikhail smiled. "Sometimes the best technology is the kind that works without power."
He turned to Ixil.
Your people understood the science behind these crystals well enough to build industrial filters. The only difference is scaling it down to survival basics.
I'm beginning to understand,
Ixil said, examining her own handiwork.
These primitive techniques require intimate knowledge of natural processes. We've relied so heavily on computers to mediate our interaction with the environment that we'd forgotten how to work with it directly.
Another tremor shook the chamber, smaller this time, but a reminder that their situation remained critical.
Speaking of working with the environment, Mikhail said, we need to read those tremors, figure out what the volcano's doing, find a way to signal for help. But first, let's get everyone's filters secured, one problem at a time.
The team worked with growing confidence, adapting their scientific knowledge to practical survival needs. Even as the chamber grew warmer from the volcanic activity below, Mikhail saw something else growing. Respect. Not just for him, but for the knowledge itself. The fundamental understanding of how their world worked without computers to interpret it for them. They weren't just surviving. They were learning to think in a new way. Or perhaps, Mikhail reflected as he helped Terran adjust their filter seal, it was actually a very old way, one that most humans had also forgotten. But not him. The sound hit them first, a roar like freight trains colliding, echoing through the cave system. The floor shuddered as a secondary eruption shook the mountain. Loose rock clattered down around them as the team pressed against the walls.
Main passage is gone,
Mikhail reported, peering through the dust-filled corridor they'd come through. The rockfall had sealed it completely.
No way back that direction.
The gases will find other ways up,
Ixil said, touching the wall.
We should keep moving.
Mikhail nodded. Their improvised filters were holding, but each eruption changed the cave dynamics. Stand still too long, and the volcano would find them.
There's a draft coming from that side passage. Means it connects to the surface somewhere.
The passage narrowed as they pressed deeper, forcing them to move single file. Heat seeped through the rock, making the air shimmer. Mikhail kept one hand on the wall, reading the stone's texture. The volcanic activity was changing the mountain structure. A wrong turn now could trap them in a dead end.
Back at the staging facility,
Terran said as they ducked under a low arch.
You mentioned something about similar situations?
September 2081, Mikhail said. North Tower, Stairwell B. 13 of us made it into a pocket when the building came down. No power, no radios, toxic smoke everywhere. Had to find our way out by touch and instinct.
How long? Someone asked.
27 hours.
Mikhail tested a ledge before stepping onto it.
Longest shift of my life. But we got everyone out.
Did you ever...
Ixil paused, choosing her words carefully.
Did you ever think you wouldn't make it?
Every minute.
Mikhail helped her across a gap, the heat from below making the rocks treacherous.
But that's not what mattered. What mattered was keeping everyone focused on the next step, the next breath, next problem to solve.
The passage opened into a larger chamber split by a deep fissure. Steam vented from the crack, carrying the sharp scent of mineral-laden water. The far side rose toward what might be another exit, but the gap was too wide to jump. Terran consulted their dead tablet out of habit, then caught themselves.
These crystal formations, could we use them? Create a bridge structure?
Good instinct, Mikhail said. But we need something flexible. Too rigid and it'll shatter when the mountain moves.
He unslung his pack, pulling out coils of high-tension cable, part of their original survey gear.
Old rescue technique. We anchor lines on both sides, create a guide rope to pull ourselves across.
The anchors would need significant tensile strength,
Ixil said, examining the rock faces. Her scientific background found new purpose in survey calculations.
These formations here, the structure should hold.
They worked together,
the Varunians' knowledge of mineral composition helping identify the strongest anchor points, while Mikhail showed them how to secure the lines. The resulting bridge wasn't pretty, but it would hold. "I'll test it first," Mikhail said, clipping his harness to the guide rope. "Watch how I distribute my weight. If something goes wrong, there's enough cable for 2 more attempts."
Wait!
Ixil touched his arm.
The atmospheric ratings we took before the equipment failed. You knew what they meant. Real dangers our sensors missed. How?
"Experience," Mikhail said. "Not just mine. Generations of firefighters passing down knowledge. What different colors of smoke mean, how buildings sound before they collapse. Things you can't learn from a computer."
We've done the same,
she said.
Passed down scientific knowledge, but somewhere along the way...
You started letting machines do your remembering for you. Mikhail checked his harness one last time. Nothing wrong with technology, but you need to own the knowledge yourself. Keep the old skills sharp. Steam swirled around them as he started across the gap, the cable creaking with his weight. One step at a time. Next breath. Next problem. The far side grew closer as he worked his way across, testing each foot placement. Halfway across, he felt the mountain shift again. Not the sharp jolt of an eruption, but the slow groan of settling rock. The cable tension changed subtly, an anchor point beginning to fail. "Ixil," he called back. "Remember what I said about buildings before they collapse? That sound you're hearing now, it's the same principle. We've got maybe 10 minutes before this whole chamber shifts. Everyone needs to cross, now!" She didn't hesitate.
Terran, you're first. Move exactly as Mikhail showed us. Everyone else, prepare your harnesses.
The team moved with growing confidence, applying their quick study intelligence to the practical skills Mikhail had taught them. One by one, they crossed the gap, helping each other, working together. The chamber's groaning increased, but they kept their focus. Next step, next breath, next problem. As the lost team member reached safety, Mikhail allowed himself a small smile. They were learning more than just survival. They were learning to trust themselves, and each other, more than any technology. The emergency beacon's casing was cracked, its circuits fused by the electromagnetic surge, but its power core remained intact, a sealed chemical battery designed to survive exactly this kind of disaster. Mikhail watched as Terran examined the device, their deft hands picking through components.
The transmitter assembly is completely melted, Terran said, as the power regulation system. If we bypass the safety controls, we could create a strong enough energy pulse to be visible from orbit.
Like a flare, Mikhail said. But we'd need height, get above these ash clouds. Ixil unfolded a paper map, a backup she'd kept out of habit, though she'd never expected to use it.
The main peak rises another 1,000 meters. If we can reach the summit, we'd clear most of the volcanic interference.
The peak's active, one of the team members pointed out. We'd be climbing straight up the eruption channel. Not straight up. Mikhail moved to the map, tracing a line with his finger. See these ridges? Old lava flows, probably from the last major eruption. Same kind we climbed to get to that alcove. They'll be more stable in the surrounding rock. We spiral up using them as cover.
The thermal readings before our equipment failed showed temperatures exceeding...
Ixil stopped herself.
No, you're right. We can't rely on old data. The whole mountain's changed since then.
Mikhail nodded. We test each step, read the rock, listen to what the volcano's telling us. They salvaged what they could from the beacon, Terran's technical knowledge combining with Mikhail's practical experience to create something new. The final device was ugly but functional, a jury-rigged assembly of power cells and stripped wiring that hummed with constant energy.
One shot,
Terran said, securing the makeshift signal device in their pack.
The chemical reaction will burn out after 30 seconds.
Then we make those seconds count. Mikhail led them toward a twisting passage that angled upward. Stay close to the wall. Step where I step. The rock's different here. Volcanic glass. Slick as ice if you hit it wrong.
They climbed in silence, conserving breath in the thinning air. Their improvised filters strained against the increasing ash, but held. Mikhail had them stop periodically to check seals and clear filters. Each pause gave them a chance to read the mountain's movements. A deep tremor shook loose a shower of rocks. Mikhail pressed against the wall, sheltering Ixil as debris clattered past.
You feel that rhythm?
He asked when the fall subsided.
3 small rocks, done a big one. Volcano's building to something.
The magma chamber must be...
Ixil's eyes widened.
The pressure wave patterns. They match theoretical models of catastrophic caldera collapse.
How long?
If the models are accurate, less than an hour before the entire system destabilizes.
Mikhail quickened their pace. The passage grew steeper, forcing them to climb more than walk. Old rescue techniques adapted to alien bodies, showing the Varunians how to brace their lighter frames, use natural handholds, maintain 3 points of contact. They emerged onto a narrow ledge near the peak. Wind whipped volcanic ash around them, but the clouds were thinner here. Through breaks in the haze, they could see stars.
This is our window,
Mikhail said.
Terran, how's that device looking?
Power core's hot. Ready on your signal.
Mikhail studied the sky, timing the gaps in the ash cloud. Down below, the volcano's rumbling grew stronger. The 3-beat rhythm was faster now, urgent.
There!
Ixil pointed upward as a bright point of light crossed their view.
That's a ship! Has to be! Moving too fast for orbital debris!
Terran, now!
The device activated with a sharp click. Brilliant blue-white light burst upward, cutting through the ash like a laser. 30 seconds. They had 30 seconds to be seen. The volcano chose that moment to remind them of its power. The ledge shifted beneath their feet as the mountain shuddered. Rocks the size of cars began to fall around them.
Move!
Mikhail grabbed Terran as the young Varunian stumbled.
Back to the tunnel!
They scrambled for shelter as their signal burned out above. Through the chaos, Mikhail thought he saw the point of light change course. But there was no time to be sure. The mountain was coming apart around them.
Did they see us?
Someone asked as they huddled in the passage.
They saw something, Mikhail said. Question is whether they can reach us before this whole peak goes up.
Ixil touched his arm.
The rhythm's changed.
She was right. The 3-beat pattern was gone, replaced by a continuous rumble that shook dust from the ceiling. The volcano wasn't just building toward an eruption anymore. It was about to tear itself apart. The tunnel collapsed behind them as they ran, sealing off their path to the peak. Each impact of falling rock sent shockwaves through the mountain. Mikhail counted steps in his head, mapping their descent through the twisting passages. A particularly violent tremor sent them stumbling. One of the Varunians, Sen, their geologist, lost footing on the slick rock. The sound of snapping bone cut through the volcano's rumble as they fell.
My leg!
Sen screamed, feathers drawn tight against their neck in pain.
The joint!
Mikhail reached them first. The Varunians' hollow-boned anatomy had betrayed them, a complex fracture that would have been a simple sprain in a human. Their suit was intact, but blood stained the fabric beneath.
We need to stabilize the break,
Ixil said, kneeling beside them. Her hands moved with medical precision, assessing the damage.
The bone structure!
First we stop the bleeding, Mikhail said. He pulled a package of quick-seal patches from his belt, meant for suit repairs, but they'd work for this.
Keep pressure here. Terran, I need your help with something.
As Ixil worked, Mikhail and Terran gathered fragments of volcanic glass from the tunnel floor. The material was sharp, but incredibly strong.
We can make a splint,
he explained, showing Terran how to wrap the pieces in torn fabric.
The glass is lightweight but won't bend. Perfect for Varunian bone structure.
The suit's medical system would have... Terran stopped. No, that doesn't matter now. Show me how to set this properly. They worked together, Mikhail's rescue experience guiding Terran's knowledge of their own anatomy. The splint took shape, an elegant combination of human practicality and Varunian design.
This'll hurt, Mikhail warned Sen, but we need to get you mobile. The whole mountain's coming down.
Sen nodded, feathers still tight with pain. The setting was quick. Mikhail had done this too many times to hesitate. The Varunian didn't cry out, but their grip left dents in the rock wall.
Good,
Mikhail said when it was done.
Now comes the hard part. We need to move, and you can't walk.
Leave me, Sen said. The odds of survival...
Not happening, Mikhail cut them off. Ixil, you know how to carry wounded?
Our protocol suggests anti-gravity assistance for... She caught herself with a sigh. No, show me. Mikhail demonstrated the fireman's carry, modified for their lighter frames.
We work in teams. 2 carriers, 1 spotter. Trade off every 100 steps to stay fresh. The spotter watches for hazards and calls rotations.
They organized quickly, the team's efficiency finding new purpose. Ixil took first carrier position with Mikhail, insisting on leading despite her rank. Terran spotted, their keen eyes analyzing the path ahead. The mountain's rumble grew louder as they descended, pressing them to move faster. Mikhail felt the difference in the vibrations. The caldera was collapsing in stages, working its way down to their level. "Rotation!" Terran called. The switch was smooth, practiced. They'd learned. "The passage ahead," Ixil said during her spot rotation. "It follows an old magma tube. The structure's more stable than the surrounding rock."
Mikhail nodded. Good eye. Natural reinforcement. Might buy us time.
They pushed deeper into the mountain's core. The heat grew worse, straining their filters, but the tube's walls held. Sen remained conscious, helping where they could by shifting weight during carrier changes. A fresh tremor shook loose a rain of pebbles. Terran raised a hand for a halt, studying the fall pattern. "The impacts! The frequency indicates a larger structural failure above us."
"How long?"
Mikhail asked. "Minutes! The resonance is building." "There's another tube intersection ahead," Ixil said. "I saw it on our way up. It angles toward the surface." Mikhail adjusted his grip on Sen.
"And that's our play. Everyone ready to move fast?"
The team's response was immediate. No hesitation, no debate. They'd learned to trust each other's judgment, technology and experience working as one. They ran through the darkness, guided by touch and memory. The intersection appeared ahead, a black sash in the tunnel wall. As they turned into it, the main passage collapsed behind them. But they were already moving, having already taken their next breath and already focused on the next challenge. The magma tube spat them out onto a plateau swept by superheated wind. Stones ejected from the volcano's crown rained down like artillery fire, igniting patches of strange native vegetation. The resulting flames spread with unnatural speed across the volcanic plain. "The extraction point is northeast," Ixil said, supporting Sen as they caught their breath. "But these fires—" Mikhail studied the burning landscape. The smoke moved wrong, curling patterns he'd never seen in earthbound fires.
"The plants are alcohol-based. Burns hotter than carbon-based vegetation."
Yes, Terran said. "The molecular structure allows rapid oxidation at lower temperatures. The smoke itself is combustible."
"Which means we can't go through it."
Mikhail watched the flame patterns, reading their movements like he'd done countless times before.
"But we can go around. The heat creates wind currents, draws air in at the base, pushes it up and out, creates gaps."
A massive chunk of mountain disappeared behind them, swallowed by the collapsing caldera. The impact sent a fresh wave of burning debris across their path. "The fire will encircle us soon," Ixil said. Her analytical mind processed the spread patterns. These outcrops are channeling the wind flow.
Good catch. Mikhail pointed to a ridge of black stone. That's our path. Fire needs fuel. Bare rock won't burn. They moved as one unit now, the team's coordination refined by necessity. 2 members supported Sen, while the others watched for falling debris. Mikhail led them along the ridge, tracking the fire's movement through its effects on air currents. A wall of flame cut across their path. The heat was incredible. Their suits' temperature alerts would have been screaming if they still worked. The burning vegetation carried strange colors in the fire, purple-tinged tongues of flame that danced in ways that defied normal physics.
The molecular breakdown is creating free radicals,
Terran said, analyzing even as they retreated from the heat.
The color variation indicates different combustion temperatures.
Tell me what that means for the flame spread, Mikhail said. How's it move?
The purple burns coldest. It's following the alcohol vapor. The white core is hottest, but moves slowest because it needs direct fuel contact.
Mikhail nodded. So we watch the purple. When it shifts, we know the main fire is changing direction. He turned to Ixil. Your people study wind patterns on gas giants, right? Same principle here. Heat creates movement, creates gaps. Understanding lit her eyes.
The fire's own thermal updraft will force cooler air down between burn zones. If we time it right...
We can slip through the gaps, Mikhail finished. But we need perfect timing. Everyone watches the smoke. When I call it, we move fast. They waited, pressed against hot stone as the firestorm raged. Mikhail read the patterns, so alien yet so familiar. The team's eyes tracked with his now, learning to see what he saw.
There!
Ixil called first.
The purple flames are shifting east!
Good eye. Ready? Now! They ran through the gap, heat pressing against them from both sides. The path through was narrow, barely wide enough for them to carry Sen, but they'd learned to move as one, anticipating each other's actions. The fire closed behind them as they reached another stone ridge. Above, the volcano's death throes painted the sky with red light and burning rock, but they were through the worst of the flames. The extraction point should be just ahead, Mikhail said, but we've got a new problem. The ridge ended at a sheer drop, 30 meters down to the next stable ground. Below, more patches of alien vegetation burned, creating a maze of purple-white fire, and somewhere in that maze, rescue waited.
We've come too far to stop now,
Ixil said. She turned to her team.
We have the knowledge. We have the skills. We just need to put them together.
Mikhail smiled behind his filter mask. The rescue ship appeared through the smoke as a dark shape against the burning sky. Its running lights cut through the ash cloud in steady pulses, a deliberate pattern that caught Mikhail's attention. They're signaling, he said. Old code, light and dark, like a lighthouse. Ixil studied the pattern.
The atmospheric interference. They're warning that they can't maintain anti-gravity stability for landing.
Which means we need to get up to them. Mikhail uncoiled the remaining cable from his pack. Their makeshift bridge equipment had served them well inside the caves. Now it would serve a different purpose. Terran caught on first.
The ship's hull is magnetically shielded. If we can get a line up there...
It'll hold. Mikhail weighted one end of the cable with a piece of volcanic rock. But we need a perfect throw. Those winds are tricky. The ship held position about 20 meters up, fighting against the chaotic air currents created by the fires below. Its hull plates shed ash in constant streams, creating an ever-shifting target.
The hull segments,
Ixil said.
The magnetic field is strongest at the junction points. See how the ash builds up there.
Mikhail adjusted his aim. The weighted cable swung in widening arcs as he calculated the throw. Not so different from tossing a rescue line between buildings, just had to account for alien wind patterns and magnetic fields. The cable sailed up through the ash. The weighted end struck a hull junction and stuck fast, held by magnetic force. Mikhail tested the tension. Good hold, but this is the hard part. Cable's not powered. We climb manually. With Sen injured, Terran began. We adapt. Mikhail pulled spare cable sections from the others' packs. We build a harness, distribute the weight between 4 people, climb in pairs. They worked quickly, combining climbing gear with suit components. Sen's splint needed reinforcement. Terran handled that while Ixil helped Mikhail rig the lift harness. The result looked strange, but felt solid when they tested it. First pair goes up light, Mikhail said. Establishes an anchor point. Second pair follows with Sen. I'll take rear guard.
No! Ixil's tone allowed no argument. You've guided us this far. You take lead position. You know how to secure the top line. I'll guard rear. A massive explosion lit the sky as another section of Caldera collapsed. The ship wavered in the blast wave, but held position. Their time was running out. The first pair, Mikhail and Terran, started up the cable. The wind drove ash and embers against them as they climbed. Below, the remaining team members maintained tension on the safety lines, their movements synchronized through hours of practice. They reached the ship's hull together. Mikhail secured the top anchor, while Terran signaled the next pair to begin their ascent. The hull's magnetic field made their tools act strange, but they learned to work around technical problems. The second pair started up, Sen suspended between them in the makeshift harness. Their progress was slower, deliberate. The ship's pilot adjusted position continuously, compensating for wind shifts that threatened to swing the climbers into the hull. Ixil began her solo ascent last, moving with confident precision. She'd watched, she'd learned, she'd adapted. The cable sang with tension as she climbed through a particularly strong gust. The volcano chose that moment to remind them it wasn't finished. A shockwave rippled through the air as another section of mountain fell into the magma chamber. The ship lurched. The cable went slack for a heart-stopping moment. Ixil swung out wide, but her grip held. She turned the swing into momentum, arcing back toward the hull. Her legs found purchase on a junction plate as Mikhail and Terran hauled in the slack. The whole team pulled together, bringing her up the final few meters. They cleared the outer hatch just as the cable's magnetic hold finally failed. Through the viewport, they watched the caldera's final collapse begin. "Plot a course," Ixil said to the pilot. "Take us home." Mikhail felt the ship's engines engage.
You know they'll never believe this report.
"They don't need to." Ixil touched the manual release on her suit helmet. "We lived it. We learned from it." She turned to her team, tired, injured, but alive. "And we'll teach others." 3 weeks after the evacuation, Mikhail stood in a familiar white corridor. The Varunian staging facility hadn't changed. Cleaning drones still followed their programmed paths. The air still moved with artificial perfection, but the occupants had. In what was once an automated equipment bay, 24 Varunian expedition members worked through basic survival drills. Their movements were precise but natural as they practiced manual suit seals and filter maintenance. At each station, a member of Ixil's team provided guidance.
"The volcanic glass makes an excellent cutting tool,"
Terran explained to their group, demonstrating the technique they'd learned in the caves.
"The molecular structure is similar to obsidian. When fractured correctly, it can be sharper than surgical steel."
Mikhail smiled as he watched the young scientist work. Their technical knowledge enhanced the practical skills rather than competing with them. The students asked questions about crystalline structures and molecular bonds while learning to craft basic tools. "They're catching on quick," Ixil said, approaching from a side corridor. Her walk still held its natural grace, but the stiffness of protocol had softened. "The review board approved our modifications to the training program." "Good." Mikhail gestured to where Sen, leg still not quite fully healed, was teaching emergency medical techniques.
Though I notice you kept the automated systems.
"Technology isn't our enemy." Ixil touched a control panel, bringing up environmental data. "But we now understand it needn't be our only tool.
Every expedition team will train in both. A junior researcher hurried up to them, feathers slightly askew with excitement.
Expedition Leader Naram! The mineral samples from the zeolite filters! We've identified 3 novel crystal structures! The volcanic environment created formations we've never seen before!
Document everything, Ixel said, especially the practical applications. Knowledge means nothing if we can't use it. The researcher nodded and rushed off. Mikhail watched them go, remembering Terran's similar enthusiasm that first day. You've built something important here. We all did. Ixel led him toward a conference room where the rest of their team waited. The review board wants our input on the next set of training protocols. They're expanding the program to include other exploration divisions. Inside, the team had spread manual maps across the table alongside digital displays. They debated entry vectors and emergency routes, each contributing their unique perspective. Sen's geological knowledge merged with Terran's technical skills, creating new solutions to old problems. I could stay, Mikhail said, help develop the program. Ixil shook her head. You've taught us what we needed. Now we adapt it to our own needs, find our own way forward. She touched the scarred surface of his old helmet, preserved as a teaching tool. But we'd welcome you back any time as a colleague. Maybe I'll take you up on that. Mikhail checked his watch. My transport leaves soon. Fire department consultant job. Someone finally noticed that alien atmospheric fires need new containment protocols. Then we both have work to do. Ixil extended her hand, a human gesture she'd adopted naturally. Safe travels, Mikhail. He shook her hand, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. The facility's perfect white walls now held marks of use, scuffs from practice gear, wear patterns from actual work, signs of life breaking through the sterile surface.